How's everybody doing today? There's a subject that I've been meaning to get to for a while, and that's how to actually use music effectively in your video edits and in your production for using on YouTube. And I think it's one of those things that a lot of people either use music or don't use music and have very definitive, ideas of how it should be used, or they have experiences of how it should be used. And I'm always thinking there's better ways to do it. And I wanted to talk to that conversation today a bit. Gervanch saying, hello, sir. How are you? I'm pretty good. How you doing, pal? Hey, Jay. How you doing? Mr. Jay Lippman in the house, my go-to guy when it comes to doing all things DaVinci Resolve. I loved your new video, by the way, pal. That was really great. He did some cool horror effects that are pretty downright awesome that I wish I could do. I want to rock. I want to rock too. I'm ready to rock. So listen, let me ask you guys quickly here in the chat. How many of you are using music in your YouTube videos? Just give me a yes or a no. Either way, yes, you are, no, you aren't. I'd like to get a feeling for who is using audio and music underneath their video tracks, and if they're using it for different reasons. And I want to try to get into that conversation a bit and show you some tips about how you can use it, hopefully in a slightly different way. Jay is, Mr. Doug Hewson is. I'm getting a lot of yes here. Gold prospecting's yes, absolutely yes, yes. I'm seeing a lot of yes. So a lot of yeses here. I'm that way too. I love using music in different ways in different portions of my videos. Let me ask you another thing. How many of you are choosing one music track that you're getting from someplace like either the YouTube audio library or Epidemic Sound, or pick your story blocks, one of those? How many of you are picking one song to go with your video, and that's the song you use in the video? Give me a yes, one song, or if you use more, give me a number. How many songs are you using? 1, 2, 3, 7, 12? Going off full Peter McKinnon, dropping about 14 songs in any given video. I tend to use a couple, but a lot of times I'll use one, and I'll use it differently than some people expect. And I want to talk about that today. Because I think it's important. I think a lot of people sometimes don't realize how tricky it can be to take a song and make it match up with your video track and make it do something that perhaps you hadn't really thought of, that you're sitting there saying, well, I think I put the song in and I let it run and I try to put it in the right spot, and then hopefully the video works out with the music underneath. So I'm seeing, look, here's some interesting answers. Eclipse says he uses 2 to 5. Volo says 5 or 6, quite a few. Iggy uses 1. A few. We got a few from 1 Second Life. A few. Yes, 1 song. So it kind of varies back and forth. Mr. Justin Ziegler with a $1.99 super chat. You have the best hair on YouTube, Daniel. Thank you. That cost you $1.99 to tell me that. So I appreciate it. You could have said anything at that point, and I would have put it on screen. So thank you for the super chat, and thank you for the kind words, Justin. I appreciate it. So here's back and forth, right? 3 to 4 different ones. I search for new all the time. I do that too. Here's the thing. I think that what people tend to do in general is they'll try to figure out a song that matches what they're trying to do, like a mood or a feeling or a style of music. So they'll try to figure out a song that matches the tonality of that video and try to get the right emotion going. And sometimes if you're going, I mentioned Peter McKinnon, he's really good at using different songs throughout his video, depending on how he wants to change the mood. Sometimes it gets happier, darker, more intense. And when he does that, he'll try to change the music up to have that reflect what's going on in the video. But what most people I've talked to don't do is edit their audio. I mean, seriously, edit the audio. I think a lot of people bring the music in and go, I'll play that song here, and then when I get to a different part, I'll play a different song there. And when I ask them, like, how much editing do you do on the song? They go, what? I always get this, like, I don't really do any editing. I kind of let the song play in the parts that I want, and that's what I do. And if I want a different feeling, I'll put in a different song. A lot of times I'm completely sort of remastering these songs and changing the way that they were orchestrated from their original versions to fit the pacing and the structure of what I'm trying to do with my video content. Justin, again, I like your new overhead shot. Yeah, there is up there. I have my, that's a GoPro that I had kicking around. I'm like, hey, let's get another camera angle up there. We'll see how that works out in the future. Sometimes it's a nice top-down shot to see what kind of trouble I'm causing. Thank you for the super chat, pal. $9.99. Man, you're paying for all the coffee today. So let me do this. I want to talk to you about editing your music inside of a video editor or a digital audio workstation. I personally prefer doing it in a digital audio workstation because you have more control, unless you're using a really advanced video editing software. But even the ones that are pretty good out there aren't really great digital audio workstations. DaVinci Resolve has a pretty good one. Adobe has a pretty decent one, but they're not nearly as complex as a true digital audio workstation. So I like having software that's designed specifically for audio. But I'm going to start with a couple. We'll start with, I think that we'll start with just Filmora. A lot of you guys out there I know use Filmora, and it's a real easy one because it's straightforward. You bring down video tracks, you bring down audio tracks, and you get things going. So in this case, let me do this. Let me try I grabbed a bunch of footage that it was completely random of snowboarders, snowboarding. And I thought, all right, maybe I can put together some snowboard clips and see if I can do something with it. Let me bring down one clip. I've got one clip of this dude. Looks like he's just, I haven't even really looked at it. I went, oh, this is some stuff. Guy's looking around the mountain. Okay, let's see if we can create a bit of a story here quick. All right, he's looking around the mountain with his snowboard in his hand. Let's get him. There's another one of, it's not the same dude. I understand that. We're going to have to, this might change. It's like, how come his clothes change? And his board is completely different. And it's a girl, right? That might happen. All right, so here's some clips of the snowboarder walking across the snow. Here's one, the snowboarder actually sitting down and starting to buckle in. That's a girl. So this is someone that's going to be changing all kinds of things along the way. Let's pretend this is one snowboarder, though. And then we get some other footage of a snowboarder kind of free riding. There's a little bit of free riding right here. That's kind of cool. And then there's some other ones of some jumps. Let's throw some nice jumps. Looks like we got a front side. Ooh, a little bit of sketch in the air there. Let's see. I think I have another one here. Is another jump in here? Yeah, I think this is another jump. We'll put a couple of jumps in there. Here's a different jump. And then there's this other shot of sort of like, I'm going to call this end of the day, just looking out over what happened. That could be morning. I'm going to call it dusk. So this is some clips, right? So here's a really typical kind of edit that I might find myself in, where I've tried to create this story arc of, okay, snowboarder goes to the mountain, takes a look around, straps in, gets up there, starts throwing some tricks, right? And then the end of the day says, well, that was a great time. So our story arc is going to be very limited. But a lot of times I'm trying to figure out how to get music to work with this and how to do something that makes a ton of sense with the flow and the pacing. I did grab a song here. I grabbed one from Epidemic Sound that was called Bruiser. Let me do this. I will just play this track here. And it's just sort of it's a song that's basically guitar driven, and it starts pretty straight, and then it picks up the pace. So here's this pick. Can you guys hear this okay? Let me know. Real straightforward thing, right? It's got a nice groove to it. We love this kind of rock stuff. And then you can hear like some drums come in, that kick. Right? That kind of thing. Pretty straightforward. And as it gets going later on in this song, it even picks up a little more and more of the band comes in. All right. So here's what a lot of people will come in and they will just, excuse me, they'll just drop this song and say, well, this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to play it and I'm going to try to make it somehow fit in under my video. What I tend to do is I start structuring my video in terms of pacing. I'll start cutting things together roughly and say, I want it here for this long, there for this long, then go on to this, and try to get the video pacing just sketched out. It's like a framework of what I'm going to do. And then I have the ability to lengthen or shorten parts and move them around based on integrating it with the music. But there's things that you can do in the music to adapt that too. I don't just change the video. I really sit down and say, well, how can I get the music to work the way I would do with the video? Maybe I don't want this part here. I don't like where it goes to the chorus. I want it to stay on the intro longer. I might need it to do something twice as long or get to the chorus quicker. These are all kinds of things you can do even in simple video editing software. And I want to show you some tricks how to do that. So let's start here. I'm going to start back here. Let's just kind of put this together. I'll turn the music off for the moment and we'll say, okay, here's a dude. He's kind of looking around, checking out the mountain. Like, how long do you expect something? Let me see if I get the best shot of him looking around. There he is looking up and looking around. There's a good one right there. He turns his face, which is cool. All right. So let's say I want that much of turning his face. And it probably started when he just started looking around somewhere in here. So I'm going to cut off the beginning. I'll just delete that. And I'm going to delete this middle part. I don't have the auto ripple on. Let me get rid of some of these. Let me ripple delete this stuff. All right. It won't let me do, well, that's locked. Hold on, let me move this. And ripple delete this and move it all over. Okay. So now what we have here, I'm going to lock this bottom track. What we have here is, okay, so he's looking around a bit, right? The guy tends to look around, gets a little scope of what's going on out here, kind of like that. I don't know if that's going to be too long or not. We'll just rough it. Now let's pretend this is the same snowboarder walking across the snow. I only need about that much. I'm going to delete everything after that. And then we'll say, let's pretend this is the same snowboarder. Maybe we'll start with the sun, so it'll make it feel like it's a... block out the fact it's a totally different person, potentially a girl. Okay, buckling in. A couple of seconds of buckling in. Let's delete that. And then let's jump over to kind of riding and getting down the slope here, doing a little motion. And we'll see that jump in the air. I'm going to cut that up. I'm going to do a cut on action. That jump there, I'm going to delete the second half, and I'm going to go right into this jump where they're going through the air in slow motion. That's kind of cool. I think I'll split that. I'm actually going to cross cut over to another one. Let me bring this other footage of this other jump. There's a different jump. And then I'll cross cut back to the original jump. So you kind of get a back and forth thing going on. That's all I had. This is kind of rough, but there you go. And then there's a sort of a fade until, the end of the day. So let's say that was the world's shortest snowboarding trip ever. Went up really fast, all done within 40 seconds. But that at least gives you a feeling of like, all right, I've got some pieces of the puzzle here. I'm trying to do something with all of this. Now, how do I get this to work together? This is where it gets a little tricky. When you start thinking, a lot of times when people go, well, I just put a song under that and I let it play. And that's my music bed. And I spend more time trying to find the right song for that portion. Now, if there's something else happens, I might grab a different song. But there's actually a better way to do this that I think makes this stuff work a lot smoother and make a lot more sense. Let me start off by unlocking that track, going full screen here and showing you this track. All right, so right now we have this beginning section, right? And we've got this sort of, I like this build-up guitar that's sort of crescendoing. It starts simple, where the guy's looking around, right? But then we have cuts happening, and it's like, did that cut happen at the right place? Did that make a lot of sense? One of the things I want you guys to consider is when you pick a song, I don't want to get too deep into theory here, but when you pick a song, it's going to have a beat to it. So the first thing I usually do when I'm trying to figure out the song is I'll try to figure out where the measure begins and where the measure ends. And what I mean by that is there's always a repeating pattern to the beat in a specific song, and it has a certain time signature. And without teaching theory here, we can physically count these out. You ready? Like this, playing this song. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and 1, right? So here's our 8-beat measure. That's what we're dealing with that song, is it's an 8-beat measure, repeating that 8. So I know if I'm going to try to do something with this song and I want to cut it up, I want to find that one. I always want to try to cut right on that one beat so I can figure out, okay, it's about an 8-beat measure. If I slice anywhere on an 8-beat measure, I'll get a looping pattern. Because a lot of times I'll say things like, people will say, well, how do you get a song to loop? My song, I wanted it to keep looping that part over and over. Let's start with a real simple cut like that to figure out how to loop a beginning. Here's the beginning section, right? Let me see if I can just stretch this up just a little bit, and I'm going to increase the track height to big so you can see a little better. Okay. Let's stretch this out. So I'm going to start here, and let's do that count, all right? Let's do the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and right here. So when I'm looking at the screen, I know that beat is on the 1. Now, one thing you want to do if you're using video editing software, I like digital audio software, DAWs, better because what happens is you don't have these constraints of how many frames per second. You can completely unsnap the grid and move them around. I'll show you that later. But here in this one, I can only go, if you're looking at those little hash lines like the ruler marks on top, I can only go frame to frame when I'm cutting my audio up. All right, that's as far as I can go. Thank you, Jay-Z. I appreciate the other $1.99 rival John Williams. I don't know about John. He's pretty awesome. I've seen him live back in the day when he conducted the Pops. Thank you so much, Justin. I appreciate that. Demon's Row, thank you very much for the $5 super chat. I appreciate that too. Finally caught my boys live. Much love. Much love back at you, pal. I appreciate that. So here we are, right? One of the things you want to do, let's think about this. If I'm going to cut up this audio track and I'm limited to frames, see how it jumps frame to frame? I can only go to the next frame, the next frame. One thing you want to start off with, if you want as much control as possible, is increase the frame rate of your project. Meaning if it was only set for 24 frames per second, that means I can only cut a second into 24 parts. But if I increase the frame rate to 60 frames per second for the project, that allows me to cut that into 60 different parts every second. Does that make sense? Just gives me more options to cut that up. So the very first thing I want to do is go into this project and say, let me make sure the frame rate on this project is as high as I can get it. Right now, it's only at 25. Let's bring that all the way up to 60. That's as high as Filmora goes. Watch what happens to the timeline. It'll look like it got spread out. Boom. See how it did that? Because now there's more frames in this project per second. It doesn't change the quality of anything. Don't make it think like it improved anything. All it did was give me more frames per second that I can divide this any part of the footage or audio up into. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to find my closest spot to the beginning of this beat. Let me shrink this down just a bit. To hit, this is that one. That boom, boom, right? So actually the one is right here. Darn gunk, that's the one. So I'm going to see how close I can get to just the one. I think it's about there. I'm going to lock the main footage up. And I'm going to cut that audio track, all right? I'm going to split that right there. Now watch what we can do. Let me do this. Let me shrink this down so you can see everything. I'm going to move this all the way out of the way, just for a second. I just split it. I'm just going to move it. But what I'm going to do now is I'm going to grab that beginning track. Let me right-click on it, and let me copy it, all right? And I'm going to add another audio track. I'm going to try to use multiple audio tracks here because just one can be problematic for me. What do I add, a video track? Come on now. So here's another audio track. Let's do this. Let's activate that next track down below, and I want to paste into that audio track. Okay, so now I've just got them on. It's the same thing. It's right where that cut was. So where that hit, I think that's where the next beat was about to start. I grabbed the first beat at the beginning, and I'm going to see if I can create a loop. I get this a lot. People go, how do I loop it? I want it to happen longer. But I'm going to take a quick listen to see how seamless that is and what I have to do to smooth it out. Not too bad. Even just a straight cut is actually pretty decent. It's actually pretty close to, did you guys hear it? Can you hear, without seeing the transition, can you hear an obvious split? That's actually pretty smooth. All I did was found the one beat, right? Let's go back to the beginning here. I'm going to start playing it, and we'll count along. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. And it picked right back up on the one. Now, if I wanted to keep doing that, the reason I put it in a different track is if my time was slightly off, if the beat was kind of off, I could move it ahead a frame and then adjust that and move this back a frame. And I'm not sandwiched, being locked up in this track above. I can do it below, and it makes a lot more sense for me. That way I have more control out of it. But I can go back and do the same thing. I can go, well, let me put the playhead right at the end of that split right here, right, where the second one was ending. And if we wanted this to keep going for even longer, just activate that top track and let's paste again what we had copied into our clipboard into that upper track. And what we'll end up with is another split. So now what I've done is I've taken that beginning section of this song, and if we listen along, what you'll hear is I've just taken that beginning section, I cut it right on the beat. I tried to make sure, now if it was a little off, I could blend it and put a little fades in and out to make sure that one overlapped and one faded out as the next one was slightly fading in over like a frame. But right now it's working pretty good. So if I'm just watching this run, I can see this count going. And I go, does it feel like it's repeating now? Yeah, nice, right? Smooth, you don't really notice it, especially under a video. And now all I've effectively done is I could do this forever. I could decide to make the intro of this song 18 minutes long if that's what I needed. And what I've done is taken this one section and made it the way I want it to be. I've said, this is why I just want that to keep looping longer and longer and longer. What do we got? Who's in the chat here? Is that Blaine Locklear? Hey, Blaine, good to see you, pal. Thanks for all you do to help us creators grow on YouTube. You rock. No, you rock, my friend. Thank you for the super chat. I really appreciate it. And I appreciate you being here, my man. Always a pleasure to see you. Thank you again. So see what we did there, everyone? All we did was we just started taking sections on the beat. If you know where the downbeat is, you can slice and you can start stacking. So that way you can take a song that maybe was 3 minutes long and it had like an 8-second intro, and you go, boy, I wish that intro was 24 seconds long. You know, I know how to do that. I'll just grab it. I'll find out where the downbeat is, and I'll start looping it inside of my video editing software. I can just keep cutting it and looping it, having it play over itself so that it doesn't get to that part, right, where the downbeat where it would have picked up. You can actually say, okay, that's where I want it to, you know, pick up and decide where that happens in your video. Now, I haven't done anything here, right? Right now, it's pretty much just a straightforward, you know, putting stuff together, straight cuts. But let's actually look at our footage and see. Let's start seeing if we can build something that makes sense. Let's start from the beginning. This is an 8-beat measure. Let's see where it makes sense to move some of our video around. Now that I like that sort of that guitar where it does like the wow right on the change, right? Don't dig down. I'm like, you know what? It'd be nice. Why don't we put the video change right on that big open gown? We'll put it right on the one and follow that change. So that's one of the things I would probably instinctually go to if I'm trying to figure out where a change goes. I would go up to my footage and I go, okay, I had the guy looking around a little bit longer. Can you see here? You can see the audio track, if I get this in frame, ends here, but actually the video track goes a little bit longer. So one of the things I can do is, why don't I drag that back and right on that beat, let me change it there, and let me see what that does, see if that works. Right, so now you get that nice vump, right, change right to the walking part. So we'll follow that for a second. I think the walking makes sense right there. It also moved this because I've got the ripple delete on. Let me push that back. But here we go. And maybe we say the same thing, right? Maybe we can go, okay, well, that was cool. One shot of this dude kind of looking up and around with a snowboard, checking out the mountain. Maybe we get another 8-beat measure of that person walking across the snow and go, I know this is where the song actually kicked in. Maybe I want to stay here for another measure and keep it really laid back. I don't want it to pick up yet. I still want it to be just getting ready. So in that case, what I would do is I would say, all right, why don't we do the same thing we just did? Let's grab this upper track and let's pull back this change so it's right on that audio split, right? So where this 8 measure above, this matches with this one. And then when it switches over to strapping in, and then it goes to this other thing. So now we get to make decisions. Now, listen, I'm not going to brag and say that these decisions are all the right decisions. We're working with some random clips here to try to put something together. But I really want you to focus on how treat the music track just like you would your video track. Cut it up, move it around. Figure out what part you want. Now, if we listen to this, let me find that other part. There's a whole nother section of the song, right, that I pushed way to the back where we're just playing with the beginning. We were looping that together and creating repeated parts there. Well, let's go back and actually take a look at what it was we had left. All right, let me go to the other side. And let me just play this other portion of what was left in the song. So there's a kick, right? It's all right. It's a slow build. All right. I kind of like where the band, now we've got the whole band coming in. I like that better. Like I actually don't want that other build section. I'd actually rather have it start right where the band kind of kicked in if I can. Let me find it. Nope. There might be too much drums going on. Let me see if we can find it. Let me see it. Ooh. It's going to be there's a noise over this one, so we'll see if we can do it. That's kind of close. There might be something in there. I'm going to try to clip this right around where I think that starts. Something like that. There you go. So that's near the one, right? I'm just listening. I'm going by eye. I use these spikes in the music to find the beat. You could also apply the beat detector from Filmora that would show you, put markers in it, and it would help you find where the beats are. I'm used to sort of listening so much to music that I can tell after I've heard a song a bit, I know where the pieces are. So I'm going to get rid of that whole section before. I don't want that. I actually like right where it kind of comes in. So let me do this. Let me shrink the project here. Let me get my face out of here so you can see what I'm doing. Let me bring that back. And I just want to see something here. I thought this is not going to make much sense. Musically, let's see how it comes together just from, see what the spacing is. Okay, so that picked up to the big part, but that's too abrupt for me, right? But we went right from the count in, that's sort of a slow guitar thing, that right, to this big kind of bam, and it drops in. I like that cut, even though it had a big drum intro and stuff. When we cut on those single beats, when you know where the measure begins, if this is an 8-count measure, we cut right on the one. It allows you to get away with some of this stuff sometimes, where you can blend things in if you're cutting right on the beat. One thing I don't like, I have an issue right now. Let me see if I can show you what I got going on. I have an issue here that this entire piece of footage of strapping in, can you see up here? It ends before that 8-bit measure. So I'm like, man, I liked all those other cuts that changed on the beat, but then this one at the end, I don't even have enough footage for it. Like, that's the entire piece of footage strapping in. I could stretch a little bit, I guess, and there is more. I could push it over, but let me try something else instead. Let me try doing, yeah, maybe I can I think there's enough to push. Let me try this. That pushes a little. All right, let me try something different. I don't want this just to go from, that's too heavy for me. That's too heavy for me. I want to try something different here. Let's try a drop cut here in the audio. What would be cool is if we know what the count is, let's see if we can leave a little space for it to breathe for a second, all right? So the way 5, 6, 7, 8, and 1. So there's the and 1. So I only want half of that measure. I'm gonna see if I can get 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, and have it end there. And see if I can leave a space in here. Let me start by cutting off about half of this and see where that is in that song. We're just gonna listen. We want it to end right about there. Da-da-da-da-dum. All right, it's pretty close. Okay, it's got a little bit of leftover trail in there. I'm just gonna move that back just a hair. I'm gonna put a little bit of a dissolve. Let me see if I can go full screen. I'm gonna see that little end. I just put a little bit of fade in. Let me see if I can get that to sort of fade out quickly, almost like it stops there. A little bit extra noise. We're really close here. Let me just get that. It's got a little extra. Let's see if I can kill the extra. There it is. That almost feels like a closed hi-hat. So now if I did this right, because what I did was I cut everything by measure, right? So the way we did this was everything was 8 counts. I knew I had an 8 count, up to an 8 count, up to an 8 count. That second half right over here starts right on the downbeat. So if we do this right, we should actually have this song should, even though we're going to leave a space, it will cut right to this upbeat part, and the timing should be right. So if I roll back, watch what happens. We're just kind of coming into this, right? 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, and right, and it hits here. My count was probably a little off. Physical. 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. There it is. So it drops right on that beat. So as we're watching and we're putting that up on screen, what we can do is if we want that little bit of tension, you can say, why don't we remove that and come back in on the beat? And I think that might be too long a drop. We might do 2 beats, but here's simple things that you can do to say, I'm just gonna drop for a beat, I'm gonna drop for a measure, a half a measure, and you can actually drop and come back in on a heavier part later on in the song and rearrange how things are. Decide one piece of that music that came in somewhere else that was later on in the song, come back to it, modify it. Another thing you can do is don't be afraid to play around with the actual the EQs and the effects on these things. Did I miss a message from you, Megan? Don't be afraid to play around with the EQ settings and change the way that things are actually sound. A lot of times people go like, well, that was how this audio sounded, right? Like they listen to the video and the track inside of the video and go, well, that's the piece that I downloaded from wherever I got it, and it sounded like this. Let me see if I can hit play. If this was the track. Right? One thing you can do is don't be afraid to jump on in there and say, maybe I want to make that smaller. Maybe I actually want to take that. I'm going to left click on that, open up the audio effects up here. And I'm going to customize the EQ for that. Let's make it more kind of a telephone. Let's roll off the lower end. Let's roll off the higher end. And let's do basically a rainbow curve, which is going to give this more of a high pass filter kind of sound. It'll sound a little more telephone sounding, and it'll take all that bottom end out, and it'll just change the tonality of it. Let's see what that did for the clip. So simple change. Did you hear that audio thing? So I'm using the exact same piece. I'm doubling that up. What happened in this audio is the same thing that happens below here. But all I did there was I actually had that change the EQ on it. So now it's just a little more, it's got a little more throat tone. And one thing you could do too is you could actually, because these are together, let me do this. Let me stretch this out. These should still be on the same beat. I put these all on the beat. Okay. See how that picked out? What I did, I'm going to see if I can these are all lined up. All these beats are the same. So I can actually stretch this one out and watch this. What I'm going to do is I'm going to fade out of this more EQ'd one and fade back in. You want to do it somewhere about the halfway mark. Let's crossfade right there. Let's see what happens. So I've done a crossfade starting right where this one starts. I stretched that out and I did a fade out, okay, of the top track, which was EQ'd. And then I'm going to bring you don't need the cursor here, but just so you can see, that's where I brought this fade in. So as one is slowly fading in from 0, the other one's fading out from 100. And that can give us a bit of a crossfade. So it's not just an instant change. You hear that? Do you hear how that slid in? You catch how that one, it was like, instead of just being that hard change, we overlapped them, and because we know we're all on the beat, we can stretch it out. We'll fade out one and fade into another one, and that gives you that change, so you can actually create a little bit more mood going from something that's a little more telephonic. Right? So here's those pieces coming together. Just small changes. And this is all just a song that I downloaded. I don't have access to the original tracks, the drums, anything. All I have is the finished track, but I'm looking at it just like a piece of video footage, right? I'm thinking about it the same way as if I'd filmed something and said, all right, there's the line I got right, or there's the image I got right, or there's the video shot I got right, but I only want it to start here and end here. Treat the music you bring into your video project exactly the same. Don't be afraid to cut it up and go, nope, I want that piece and I want it here. You can even take tracks that are in the same key or similar tempos, and you can intercut between them. You guys have all seen DJs at, up on clubs, that when they start doing remixes of multiple songs, then they start going back and forth. If you find ones that are similar in tonality and similar in beat, you can tweak them. I've taken songs that were like, it was the same key, but one was a little faster. I just slowed it down a little bit, and I made it to be, got it to the same beat. Then I can bounce in and out of them, and you don't even know. No one would even realize that I've tweaked them just a bit so that things are blending into other songs. And it's like, oh, it was in the same key, and then it picked up into another song that was a completely different song just by cutting them up and moving the pieces, all right? Let me just stay here for a second. Let's see if we can actually make this look like something. I'm going to start here. I'm going to go back to the beginning and see if we can actually, okay. I kind of like that shot. All right, this is too long, this space. And I think it actually, yeah, that just goes too long. All right, so I'm going to find a better beat to put that on. I think it waits too long. Let me stretch this back out. Let me bring this below it, and I'm going to try to match the beat. I know that the beginning of this bottom one is the beginning of that beat. That's beat number 1, right? So I'm going to go, okay, how can I get that to match? How long do I want that to wait? And it should be that da-da-da-da-dun. And I'm going to say, let me try it to line it up with a closer. I'm going to go right with that one. So we're going to go another half a beat in here. And I think I'm just going to see where this spike is. See right where I put the playhead? That's like the hit. So if I can line up these hits and keep it in tempo. All right. So let me try bringing that out. Let's see if we can do like a half a hit there. I don't want it to wait so long. And I think I'm going to chop this a little more. I actually want more of a chopped effect here. There we go. So now let's try it with just a shorter beat. I don't want it to wait so long before it gets into the next piece. Okay, we'll try it with there. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to move all of this video back so that when it hits on that big hit, we start with someone on the slopes. Okay. I think even closer. What do you guys think? Even closer? I think it waits too long. Let me try this. I'm going to put it on that very next hit, which is this one right here. Let me put the playhead on it. That's the next big hit. Let's line that up with that hit, and let's bring this thing right back and say that's where I want it to line up. And I'm going to put this right after that cut so that thing dies. All right, let me pull it back just a hair. And it's just kind of this playing around that you can do to find something that you like. You can even insert some black space if you want. If you said, you know what would be cool, Daniel? Maybe it should go dark for a minute, right? Maybe it should go, maybe it should fade out because that kind of stops and you're left with the person on the snow. Maybe you could go, let me just try cutting this a little closer. And you could go right here and say, you know what? Right when that ends, I want the video to end too. I want to insert some black space there. Let me kill the ripple delete. I'm just going to delete that section. Maybe it should go black for a minute. And you could bring that right back in where that starts. Well, it's a little off timing because we got to render it. But if we get this rendered, that should start right at the same time. You could pick a beat of where you want that to come in. And then just decide, I don't love that edit, but you can figure out where to get that to put a black spot in. Or you could say, you know, cool as if right there, that faded out. You could take a transition like a dissolve transition and go, why don't I put a dissolve transition that starts right at the end of that hit and feels like it fades out so that it sort of fades to something. I don't know if that'll give us pure black, will it? Nope, it's going to fade before it. I need to put one frame of black so that it doesn't attach to the next one. And that should give me fade to black. There you go. So just a simple bit of playing around with where that music falls. And all we did there was just kind of have that thing going from the beginning, playing along with what was happening, changing on the beat, right? So when those beats come up, slow fade into the full mix. And then we'll pull black and hit. And where it hits, we get right into some footage. Now, when we get those changes, now notice where that was, right? We're going to see if we can get these pieces to work. That one actually looks like it just so happens to fall pretty much right on that beat. It's pretty close. It is pretty close. I'm going to see if I can get a little stretch here. Yeah, I can. It looks like that's the beat. So we'll try to get these changes to happen on the beat. If we can get this actually rendered so it looks a little smoother. Let's try that. And just think about how you can move these things around. And don't be afraid to come back later and decide that you can change that completely. You could decide there's a section in there that might be later on that cuts back. Like this one has another later on in the song. Right? We got a little funk in there. Don't be afraid to do things like stack some of this stuff. Because we can come in and say, there's a little piece in here I like. There's some cowbell going on. You hear this thing here? That's kind of cool. So I'm going to slice this right about there. I like this. Kind of cool. So I'm going to take that piece that I just sliced, that whole little section right here, that's kind of this cowbell thing, and you could decide to put that in somewhere else. You could say, like, let me stack it. What if we stacked it in there? Where's the beginning of the beat? I'm going to watch for these repeated patterns. See this little hill right here? I got to line mine up so my little hill lines up. This is, I'm lining up these beat points. There's one, and I can actually stack these and get things to start happening at the same time using more than one track. You know what I mean? So we can use any of that. We could have gone on forever with that. If we wanted to let that go a little bit longer, we could have easily pushed these things out and said, why don't we stack this a bit? I'd like to actually have this track play over itself and do something a little cooler. So if you were coming back here, you could say, what if I stack this track right over and used another piece from somewhere else in the song and let it stack over itself? So see what we're doing there? We're just stacking. And you can do things like, I know it would be fun. Let me take this track here, the top one. I'm going to left click on that. And in the very top, I'm going to do something. Let me scroll down here. I'm going to take, see up in the upper left, I can pan this. I'm going to pan that all the way to the left. All right. And then I'm going to take the one below it. I'm going to pan that all the way to the right. So what I've done is I've taken 2 tracks. Anybody who happens to be listening in headphones, or if you have your phone that's stereo, if it's an iPhone, turn it sideways. And what we'll do here is now I'm going to split these 2 tracks stacked on top of each other, pan one hard left, pan one hard right, and it'll give you a much broader, wider effect when we get to that section. Thin EQ into the thick EQ. And now let's split them. So then you can start building any way you want. All of these little pieces are stuff that you can do at any point. You can grab something from the middle of the song, bring it in, layer it over another piece of the beginning of the song, start creating the way you think that song should build, not necessarily the way that the artist built it, because the artist built it based around the song. Then you're going to start building it around your video track. I'm kind of hacking through some snowboard clips, but that's what you're going to start doing is really laying into how you can figure out how to put these pieces together. I have some questions here that I'd like to take from the chat. Let me scroll back through before I miss them. I do have to take a second to thank our sponsors who allow us to do this every week. Shout out to these sponsors, my friends.
This live stream is sponsored in part by StreamYard, live streaming made simple, and by Spreadshop, the #1 resource for all of your print-on-demand needs.
StreamYard is the software I use to live stream. If you're interested, I'll put links down below. And Spreadshop is the company that allows me to make all the merch that I actually sell and use on my set itself. So if you're interested in opening up a free StreamYard account or a free Spreadshop yourself and start making merch or live streaming today, check the links down below. Thank you guys for being sponsors here. We appreciate it. Let me look at some of the comments and catch up with what we got going on. Here's the question was, would it be completely out of line during the slow-mo to actually slow the music to highlight the change of the action? What you're going to find is if you really slow down a song, you're going to feel that drag. Would it be out of the question? It would be dependent on the music. One of the things you're going to find out if you slow music too much, you can physically hear the change. Unless you have really, really strong digital audio software that can do a great job of slowing a song, and it's a very high bit rate song, you'll actually hear that change. Let me see if I can show you what I mean. If we take, let me take a piece and let me go right to your question here. Let me grab a piece of this, right? Let me copy this and put it, and I'll show you what I mean. I'll put it later on in the track so we can do exactly what you're talking about. Excuse me. Let's take that track, and up top you can see that I have the pitch for it, and I can do the speed as well. Let me click on the speed track, and let's slow it down to, half speed. Let's go 0.5. So that's going to be half the speed. I also have it pitched to one side, so let me just straighten out the audio so that's back to center. There we go. Zero. Come on now. Let's go 0. That's centered again. You'll hear artifacts when you slow this down. Can you hear that? It's a little jangly. And also the same thing happens when you speed it up because you start hearing some of the artifacts. I never say don't do it. Let's go double speed. Sometimes double speed has the same kind of weird jangly artifacts. That's super fast artifacts. So right there, it's going so fast that it's just too much. It's not doing the thing you want to do. You start hearing some of the weird artifacts in the way it plays out. What I'd say is for slow-mo, I don't know that I would just slow down the part. What I would probably do is decide how I want that to feel. Do I want it to feel like someone flying through the air? Maybe I would cut the song right there, and I would just bring in like an audio effect of like just sort of a wind blowing, like a whoo, and then drop back in on the beat when they land that trick. So think about ways to use your audio that aren't as obvious, that cut them up, move them around. Don't feel like just because this is how the song was given to you, that you can't go back in, rearrange them, stack them, cut parts that were from the end, put at the beginning, and literally make an entirely different arrangement of the track. The #1 thing you need to learn is finding songs that have a tempo you can follow. Sometimes people will ask me these questions with a little more difficult songs that are more instrumental where the flow is push and pull. And sometimes those are a little trickier to find the downbeat on. Stuff that has a little more of a solid beat behind it, it's much easier to find exactly where you want to put that, slice it up and move it around. I'm just kind of reading through the chat here. Trying to miss part of this. Okay, I think I caught that one. Let me see. Hey, Daniel, what's up? An irrelevant question. Where can I find good background music for info type video? Kind of tired of using the same type of music. I like Epidemic Sound. I use Epidemic Sound a lot. Where I get most of my sounds from, now you can go right to the YouTube audio library. For anybody who doesn't know what that is, if you go into YouTube and you scroll down inside of YouTube Studio, on the menu on the left where it says like analytics and content, at the bottom you'll actually see a link that allows you to find YouTube audio library. And any of the music in there you can use for your YouTube videos. You can't use it on videos you're going to use somewhere else outside of YouTube. But if they're hosted on YouTube, you can use any of that music free. Some of it requires you got to put an attribution in, and they're starting to expand it too. You're going to see some changes in what they're offering, so they're trying to build that up. But Epidemic Sound is pretty good. It has a nice library of different types of music based on mood. It has music based on style, like R&B, hip hop, funk, jazz. Here's the thing that I would say. When it comes to picking songs for your video, don't always pretend like you know the right song, because I think some people go, well, I like rock. Well, rock may not fit the kind of video you're making. A lot of times when I'm doing something that's kind of explainer, I'll go in and say, you know what, I want to find something that's kind of laid back and jazzy or acoustic and kind of just happy in the background, and I pull it back and it just creates a mood behind it, especially when you're doing like long explainer videos. It's like, I'm not trying to be too dramatic here. Look, a lot of the stuff I do is tutorials. So I'll create these moods behind what I'm explaining, and then try to figure out what song fits that mood if it's just like an explainer video. I think a lot of times talking head, just looking into the camera, can get really slow. So if you can get something that's a little upbeat, that's maybe a little happy, that's kind of not big cymbal crashes, that's why I tend to like acoustic guitar tracks that are kind of just poppy and they jump around, they sound kind of nice. I'll use those and they work out really well, because in the back of people's minds, they're listening to this explainer stuff, then they're kind of getting like a little mood thrown at them. So if you can put like an elevated mood and make it seem a little cooler or a little happier or a little more upbeat than just words after words, that's an easy way to get ahead of those kinds of things, so that it keeps the pace of it moving a little quicker. Eric F. Drum says, sometimes I'll use sound effects and video effects to mask an error I've played in the song. Yeah, the viewer doesn't even realize it and sees a cool effect. All the time I've done that too. One of the things is like you'll find some music doesn't cut together well, so you'll stretch one of it and you'll fade it out, and you start the next one and fade it in. Again, I'm doing this in Filmora, so it's not as intense in terms of what you can do. When I use a digital audio software, I can do high pass filters, add reverb. I can totally change. I can put flangers on them. I can split them. I can divide them. I can do really heavier things with those tracks to make them do more. There's some of that you can do in Filmora, but it's still a bit limited in what you can get away with. You can still do things like, because Filmora now has a few effects that you can add that are audio effects, but you can still create some. I've covered this before. Like you can do things like, if you have two tracks that are identical, let me do this. Let me put one right here. I think that's the same piece. And I'm going to go to this track below it. Let me activate that. Let's put the same track right here. Here's something. Whoops. Sorry. I didn't activate the lower track. All I did was mute it. It's my first time using this software. Bear with me. Come on. Why are you doing that? There we go. All right, so let me put the playhead here. I'm going to stack two identical pieces on top of each other. Let me just get them lined up. So now this is the same track, just playing on top of itself. But they're both panned left. Hold on a second. I got to pan them. Let me go. Let me do 0, which will center this. Let me center both of these. Center this one too. Okay. All right. So now this is just the same track stacked on top of itself. Right. This sounds a little louder because I've got it twice here. Well, here's something you can do too. You can create some flange. Flange is basically a bit like delay, when two signals are just slightly separated, just slightly. If you take this second one and push it forward, not enough that it becomes a delay, but just enough where it starts being slightly out of sync, you can start creating a flange effect. That's too much. That's actually a delay. Let me go one frame. And you hear now it starts to get that little bit of a flange effect. And you can get even deeper with that. You can say, well, I do want it to actually create a bit of a delay effect, right? You could say, all right, how do I get a delay on this? I'll move it 2 frames over. And you can do all the same things we talked about before. You could say, I want to get this delayed effect. I want to get a stereo spread. I'm going to put the top track hard to the left. I'm going to put the other bottom track hard to the right. But the bottom one I've started just a couple of frames later, and it'll give us a stereo spread effect. If you have headphones on or you turn your phone sideways, you'll be able to hear this to give you a stereo spread. And all that was me just taking that same footage and just splitting it a little bit, just taking stacking it and separating them and sending them left and right. All of these tricks, there's a million tricks that you can do. But I want you guys, when you're out there thinking about the audio you're putting together, think about what's the right song, what's the right mood, what's the right kind of tempo for what you're doing. And then don't be afraid to go in and play around with them. Cut sections out, bring the end at the start the song right, 3/4 of the way through, and then break it down to an intro section. You can also do things like use some of the audio keyframing to duck those levels. So once you've got it where you want it, you then can control different volume swells. Like you might have, most of you guys know how to do this simply in Filmora. It's pretty straightforward. When you have something that's playing in a track, you can take you can click anywhere in that track. Let's pick this one. And if it's playing along and you say, all right, I want it, it's going to start here. Let me put a keyframe. The keyframe is right underneath the fader up top. That little button up in the upper left where my mouse is, underneath the fader for the track. Drop in a keyframe, and then if you say, okay, I was talking here, and then I want this to get quieter, you don't even have to add another keyframe. You can actually just move the playhead to where you want it to get quieter and start pulling the fader down in the upper left, and it'll automatically add a keyframe and tell it, okay, that's where I want it to start going down. It was loud, but I needed to get quieter. And then maybe you've got something going on here where you're talking over it, and then you finish talking, and you go, oh, but I want it to go back up. Just add another keyframe there, and then move a little bit forward, and then you can actually bring the fader back up to 0. And then effectively what you've done is you've created just a dip around the talking. So if it was like cranking up some music, and then I was talking here, and I wanted to say something really important, this is the important part. Let's get back to the action here. And all you did right there is just a simple keyframe, audio keyframe duck to let your vocals stand out. So stacking, ducking, keyframing, changing the way that those things are interplaying with your video track can make a huge amount of difference. Changing the EQ, stacking them together, creating stereo spreads, bringing stuff into the end, taking the intros, putting them at the end of your song. How many times has this happened to you guys? You'll have a great song, but it ends too quickly. Your video's 10 minutes long, and you've got a great song, but it's a 3-minute song. This is the perfect way to start figuring out how to loop those tracks together, where you go, I got to find a way to make this song that's only 5 minutes long or 3 minutes long. I need it to be the longest version of the song. There's a real simple approach to that where you can look at the beginning and end of these songs. Let's start completely from scratch. Let me do this. Let me take all of this junk out of here and delete it. All right, let's start with just that main track we looked at. Let's say it's this Bruiser track, right? We can go, how does it start? Let's go all the way to the beginning. All right, it starts like this. It's got that guitar chunk, right? How does it end? Right? It's got a big, huge ending. Did you hear that? It's like, well, how do I loop that? It was too huge. Like that became too huge. If I just started the song over, it would go from this quiet thing at the beginning and it would end huge and then it starts again. And you go, that doesn't flow at all. So that doesn't work. But what you can do is try to find a quieter part in that song that you can loop back to. How about here? Remember this breakdown with the cowbell? All right, let's try this. Here's where we can create a loop. I'm going to go up and I'm going to grab that exact same Bruiser song and bring it down so that the beginning is somewhere near that breakdown point. And let's see if we can find that one, which should be, I bet you I can see it. Let me see. The first beat is right about here. Yep, right about there. Down. So what we're going to do is see if we can line up, bring it about there, and then I'm going to start looking for patterns. I'm not using any beat detection. I'm just looking for the patterns. Can you guys see some of the repeating patterns here? I'm like, man, this one on the lower track is a little behind. I can see these lumps should line up, especially these big ones. Right over here where the playhead is, there's a mountain that's very similar to this one. Those should line up. So I'll go, wait a second. Let me get those to line up a bit. That's closer. That's a little closer. We'll see how perfect we can get it. We're only at about 60 frames a second. Am I close? Sounds close enough to me. So what I would do is go the same thing we were doing over there. Why don't we, remember we stacked earlier on? Why don't we do something like, well, you could pick a spot. Let's split. Let's try for right now. I'll just split and I'll eliminate the second half of that top track, right? What I did was that track ended. That track ended here. I'm trying to extend it. So I found a spot where I could potentially overlap, and I'm going to cut off the rest. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to see if I can do a little bit of a, I can do a blend. It might work, might not. Whoops, I don't want to do that. Hold on a sec. We'll see how the blend actually works. Maybe fading in from one, fading out of the other. Could work. So I'll try that. Let me try a little bit of crossfade, see what happens. Kind of works, kind of makes a loop. I might want to actually bring it right to the same spot and go, hey, why don't we do, maybe I'll go a little longer. I actually like all of that cowbell noise. Let me see. I actually like what it did with the drums there. Hold on one second. I can probably put this right to the end and get pretty close. Let me go a little bit longer with that and find the one. There we go. I like that one. There's a good mix point. So now I'm just stacking them in points where they make sense. This thing got a little breakdown here. Let them stack and listen. Wouldn't even know. This sounds like a different arrangement, right? Just sounds like, man, it just came in and there was a different way I put it together. So I'm always looking for those pieces that make sense. Just putting a song at the end where, you know, the beginning back at the end made no sense. It was real small at the beginning and real big at the end. So find a spot in the middle where you can go, oh, I can grab that section and this section makes a lot of sense to loop from there. And I could keep doing this. I could go, I need it even longer, go back in, do a very similar split later on and cut somewhere in and start a track again. And I'm just finding the middle of the song where I can fade out of one part and fade into another. They're the same beat, it's the same song, they're the same key. So it's nice and easy, just a matter of figuring out where it makes sense. And then you can take a song, I could take this song all day long and I could make a 15-minute version of it. A lot of times I'll do that. I'll bring a song into my digital editing software first and go, I don't plan on doing a lot of changes, but I need a 15-minute version of this song. So I'll start there and all I'll do is I'll do nothing other than figure out where to loop it, take the song, stack it, loop it, and go export. Now I've got a 15-minute version of a 3-minute song that I really liked. And then I can bring it into my Filmora or whatever video software I'm using. And I can cut it back up and do all those things that I was already doing we were talking about. So pretty straightforward stuff, just stacking, just looping. Don't always feel like you have to, well, here's the song starts, here's where the song ends. That's what I have to do. One of the things people do is they get stuck in their head about, well, that's how the song goes, so I couldn't do anything. You can always do something. Just like video. You can always cut it, twist it, tweak it, speed it up, slow it down, change the EQ, stack them, slice them. There's no rules when it comes to this. I really understand anything said. Story of my life. I hear you, my friend. You've been watching my videos then, Daniel. No, Iggy, it's one of those things I think in general, a lot of us like kind of come in, we put a song under there and all we do is like kind of let it play and we turn up the volume, we turn down the volume. That's our jumping off point. That's where we learn to start putting music and stuff under our videos. So we try to find a good song that fits and we try to do a talk through, right? And that's what we're talking about, I guarantee, right? The talking head stuff. And we'll just dip it down, or sometimes people will decide I want to fade it out completely. And it just doesn't do anything. I think if you've got a video that you really want to keep pace going, don't be afraid to play around with that music bed. Switch it up a little, try different songs in and out of there, stop the music, bring the music back in, switch to another song. But think about the beats, think about the keys those songs are in, and then try to figure out how, if you want to loop something longer, you can do that all day, especially for talking heads. A lot of times I will find one song that I love, but it's not nearly long enough for the entire video. So I'm like, let me make a longer version of the song, come back, and that's when life starts getting good for me. 90% of the freelance work is doing this music pieces for ballet instructor friend of mine. It's an art. Totally is. Jay, it totally is. You could sit there and do this all day long, just piecing these things together. I could, I personally prefer not to use video editing software for it. I personally prefer, if you can do most of this in, like this one right here that I'm using is Reaper digital audio software. So what it is here is you can add in as many tracks as you want. I can change all these tracks. I can put all kinds of things in here. The greatest thing about using a digital audio software is that if I insert a media file, let me put that same bruiser track in here. The great thing about this is I can choose the options of not having to snap to a grid. So it's not right now, it's set not to snap. So what I can do here, which is really cool, is if I'm looking at this, let me see if I can expand the size of this track so it makes more sense. And I'm going to do the same here. I'll put the same import, the same file. I can do much more incremental stuff with a digital audio software. As you can see here, I've got the same track stacked on top of itself, but you can look at how far I can stretch out. All I'm doing is stretching the track. Look at how far I can stretch this out. I can stretch this down to nothing, like microseconds, right? And then I can really see these waveforms. If I'm over here, I can go, let me just pull that, and I'm not locked into any grid. I can grab it and slide it slightly, incrementally, create phasing that I want, and do much cooler things, and then add VST plugins. It's the exact same idea as using the tracks that you're using in Filmora, but if you use a digital audio software, you get this workstation. It's a lot easier to put a playhead and really see the waveforms and really line things up and go, okay, I'm going to take the valley of this one, and that's how I'm going to line it up. That playhead should line up both valleys, and you can dial it in so it is spot on. And see how much nicer the waveforms are. You can actually read them. Filmora is not bad, but I mean, once you start getting really dialed into the waveform, see how blocky they get? It's like, well, it's kind of hard to do what I want. I'd much rather have these really nice waveforms. Some people use Audacity, things like that. I like Audacity because it's free. This is Reaper, which comes from reaper.fm is the website. It's a paid software. I paid for the license, and it's not very expensive. It's under $100. But they have basically an unlimited trial version. So if you go download it from reaper.fm, you can get it right now. It's a fully functional. It's as good as Pro Tools. It's fantastic, basically full DAW. And you can download it right now. And all it'll do is every time you start up, it gives you like a reminder, like you're not paid for it. It'll give you some prompts and some advertising. And then it'll say like, would you like to continue the evaluation? Yes. And then you can keep using it. So, and it doesn't have a time limit. You could do that for a year if you love it, and then decide, I love it so much, I'm going to pay for it. But they're really cool about letting you try it literally as long as you want, fully functional, no beeps and stuff on export. It works completely. It just has that pop up at the beginning. That's one of my, that's one of the ones that I dig the most for doing digital audio work. What's the name? Yeah, that's so Reaper. Let me see if I can show you. Yeah, let me see. Let me see if I can find the website for you, and I'll pop it right into chat so that you'll have it. Reaper.fm. I'll put it in here. Reaper.fm, I think, is it? I'm saying that, like, right? I'll find the wrong one. Yes. Okay, let me do this. I'm going to drop this in chat. Yeah, Reaper. It's been around for a long time, and they keep improving it. They do a lot of updates. And a lot of the guys who are actually, that you'll see on YouTube who are audio mixers, will talk about it a lot because it really is fully functional, runs VST plugins. It's a great software, and it doesn't, the total price when I bought it, I think it was like $60. I mean, it's really, really super affordable, and you can, like I said, the trial version goes on forever, like literally forever. So it's a great one to start with. Reaper and Adobe Audition are Jay's go-to for DAWs. Yeah, the Adobe Audition's fantastic. Now, I know Jay, DaVinci Resolve has some okay audio stuff in there, much better than Filmora's, but it's still limited too, right? Do you have that same experience? It's like when you got to get into deep stuff, you really want a full digital audio workstation and a good host of different plugins. When we say plugins, what you can do in the software, Filmora started to do some stuff like that, but if I want reverb, I just go out and I download a reverb plugin and I pop it in, and it's now in my software, and I've got reverb. If I need flanger, if I need chorus, if I need pitch shifter, if I need a spectrum analyzer. A lot of times when I'm doing my own vocals and I'm trying to mix it in with music and I go, wow, my vocal tone isn't the way I want it to be, or the music is too bassy. One thing that's great about a digital audio workstation is you can drop in a spectrum analyzer. I'll show you what that looks like. Right here, I'm going into the master. Let me see if I can open up this window. Right here, you're looking at a spectrum analyzer. So when I play this, let me see if I can keep the levels down. I've got 9 tracks of it. I don't need to do that. But as I play this, it's going to give me a spectrum readout of how much bass, how much middle, how much treble is in this track. Let me turn it on. So there's my reading, right? Pretty well balanced. Not too much low, not too much high. But this is a great way you can actually look at, see how thick the bass is on this? See, it's very heavy down the bottom. I might say, man, that's a lot of bottom end. I could open up an EQ and I could say, let me just Let me turn this on. I just want to roll off some of that sub stuff. Maybe, the lowest end of that seems a little too spanky. It's got a lot of big kick, and I want it a little thinner because it's fighting with my voice. So I can roll off some of the sub lows, and then I can go, okay, how did that work out for me? Now let me look at the spectrum analyzer and see if I got rid of some of the super lows that were overtaking the low end of this. Yeah, see, now it's not quite as heavy. I was able to pull some of this bottom end out. You can keep going. You go, how much do you want to pull out? Pull out as much as you'd like. You can keep dipping it and decide which waveforms you want to pull, so it's a little flatter and it doesn't stay quite as heavy. So simple things like that in these digital audio workstations. These EQs, you can see this EQ plugin I've got in. All of these ones were free. I've got a bunch of paid ones, but you can go find all these really cool multi-band and parametric EQs that are all available for using with Reaper. I've got a couple of videos on my channel that cover this, that actually have some of the links to some of those plugins. Real easy way to start playing with your audio, especially if you want to do something like just loop a song. Go into your digital audio workstation, 2 tracks, find exactly where they line up, slide them around. There's no playing with frame rates or anything where it might be a little off. Stack them, get the right point, make that 15-minute version of your favorite song, export it, and then you go, I've already got different versions of this song I like. I've got a 3-minute version and I got a 15-minute version, and you can do whatever you want with it at that point. Makes it super easy for doing longer videos and having that one track underneath. I think I have Reaper. I'll have to give it more time. Yeah, like I said, there's a couple of videos on my channel already. If you look up Reaper, type the word Reaper on the search of my channel, you'll find that it's there's a couple of videos that'll help you walk through it, where to download it, everything. Jace's Fairlight and DaVinci is great for audio post-production videos, but the built-in tools leave a lot to be desired. Yeah, Filmora is even worse. I mean, they literally they're starting to put like delays and a little reverb, but there's no good compression. If you guys know what compression is, and limiting, that stops things from getting far too loud. That's the thing. And like most of the time, the editing that I do is moving things around, finding the right EQ, and then putting the right amount of compression and limiting so things aren't getting super quiet or super loud. It puts a nice ceiling on things and lets everything work together. So a lot of times when you're trying to mix that vocal and the audio together, everything starts getting louder when you stack them. But you can, in your digital audio software, a lot of times I'll mix things together in Filmora, and then I'll just export the entire audio track, all of music and my voice and the effects, and I'll bring it into a digital audio workstation, and I'll add some compression and add some limiter because it gets too loud at some points and too quiet in others, and I'll squash it down a bit so that all the things are happening, but it automatically keeps the thing from getting too hot or too quiet. The quiet parts get brought up, so they feel quiet. They feel open, but they're not like, whoop, do I have to crank up it's like cranking up the volume on my headset, and then it's too loud. It's like watching TV when the commercial comes on and it's 16 times too loud, and then you get back to the movie and it's like way too quiet. That happens to me all the time when I'm watching Netflix. So yeah, that's the basic kind of thing that you can start doing. Think about that. If you have any questions in the replay or in the comment section below, feel free to drop them down below and I'll get to them. A lot of times people ask me, how'd you do this? How'd you do that? How can I find some of that software? Put any of those questions down in there, and I do my best to get in there and answer them. But don't be afraid to grab some of these softwares, play around with them. It doesn't matter what you're using for a video editor, grabbing it like something like Reaper as a digital audio workstation. Really, really easy way to start learning how to play with your audio and cut it up and stack it and do cooler things. And I promise I will have more plugins that I'll talk about along the way and probably cover Reaper a little more in depth, because I think a lot of people, when they see it, they go, I'd like to learn how to use that. And it looks daunting because it's got a lot of buttons. But what you start realizing, the great thing about digital audio workstations is if you actually look at them, they're no different than like than the video editors are, right? What it comes down to is it's sort of like the timeline of if you're a Filmora person, right? It's the same thing, except there's no video tracks. There's just audio tracks. Here's one. You right click and say, I'd like to insert a new track. And it's no different. You just start stacking tracks. And then down below, you've just got the fader section that's assigned to each. Each one I click. This is just the control panel for each one of these tracks. In Filmora, you would have gone click on an audio track and it would have showed up in the upper left, right? So there's your controls. Exact same thing, but what happens here is when you click on the track, the controls are actually down below. And that's where you get all these options to do things with it, add in effects, do whatever you want to do. Really, really simple stuff. It looks harder Sometimes it looks harder because if it's foreign, if you're used to video editors, digital audio workstations can seem harder. But I would absolutely recommend checking that one out. So listen, I hope that was helpful. If you have questions, add them in afterwards down below. And I'd like to thank our sponsors one more time. Be sure to check them out. And I'll catch you guys around here soon.